Five, four, three, two, one. I think we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Audio Engineering Society's January meeting. We have quite the panel here to discuss some of the topics of DAW. I apologize for not having a camera. I focused everything I could on the audio, so hopefully you can hear me and hear everybody else a little good. My name is Anthony. I'm the chair of the Audio Engineering Society here. We are an executive that is a volunteer group. We very much participate in having 10 meetings a year is our goal. And every month we get together, we try to disseminate information. I mean, we do disseminate information. We try to share as much as we possibly can in an effort to educate our community, educate our members, share stories, share knowledge, and today is no different. We've got a panel, so we get more time with the panelists. Their bios are available on our website. If you haven't been to our website, it's torontoaes.org. And today we have a panel that's going to be talking about a technology that has had great, long-lasting impacts throughout our collective. It has really changed the world. Here we have. Let me just everybody give a wave. We've got Ross Hayes. Citrullo. I'm not going to pronounce that right. Give me.
That's pretty good, man.
Hey, good.
Screw up.
And it's Michael Noonan up in the corner there. We have Jason Spanu, also known as DJ Shine, and then we also have Chris Salim. Salim.
That's good.
Okay.
Both works.
Hey, all right, fantastic. So, give us a little. We'll start with Chris. You're in the top left of my corner of my screen.
Cool.
Tell us really, what is a DAW, and what does DAW mean to you? Really is kind of the question of the day.
For me, it's the core of my workflow when producing music, basically. This is where everything happens from musical ideas, arrangements, recording, mixing, even mastering, so
So
it's all in there.
System.
End-to-end system. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah.
Okay, we got Michael Noonan. What does a DAW mean to you and in your world and in your workplace?
Well, how long is a piece of string, Anthony? Everything that Chris said is true, but also it depends on how you're exploiting the DAW. The DAW has come, I think, to mean a piece of nominally software running on some kind of compute that is attempting to be a Swiss Army knife, something that can record, edit, process, mix, presumably in real time, but also often to our collective advantage in asynchronous workflows and batch processing and things. I think now of a DAW as just being that thing that you expect to be able to do whatever audio job you're meaning to get at right now. Unless you're doing something live. But for anything except live, I think the DAW is where we all just expect to open our computers or sit down at the computer and have something there, a meta appliance that lets us do everything we need to do and sort of improv with our source material, which is audio.
That's a short piece of string. So thank you for that, Michael. Jason, you're a DAW user. You're obviously a DJ in the background. I see your tools. What is a DAW for you in your world?
It's it's a long, short answer as well, I guess. I think it's a creative playground extension toolbox, right? And for whatever job you want to get done, there's a DAW for that now, which is kind of nice. Like we can really deep dive into the various problems that can be solved in those things.
Right.
But for a person like me, I dream of integration, system integration. A DAW for me needs to be like a spider DAW that has connections and tendrils to other things. So I might just be asking too much from a DAW, but there's solutions. So it's kind of cool living in this era.
I love it. I love it. Ross, I see a console behind you. But what is a DAW to you in your workflow and in your environments that you work in?
Thanks for leaving me for the end, because everybody's great answers are now I got to weave around them. Those are all great answers, guys. Honestly, to me, like you said, you saw the console. To me, a DAW is a tape machine. Albeit a really fast, quick editing tape machine, but in many ways, I try to use the console and everything in its analog state. I've got a big rack here with all this outboard gear, and my goal is kind of to use the tape machine and use, in my case, Pro Tools or the DAW in general, to try to know it as well as you can and not even really live in it. Try to live in the music or in the sound off the speakers with the console, so you're using your hands instead of using your eyes, right? Engine ear, not engine eye, right?
That's t-shirt. We'll put that on t-shirt for you for the.
Yeah, please.
So Ross, what was your first DAW? I think everybody's had a DAW journey. What was your DAW journey?
I think I'm kind of probably one of the rare ones to say I've actually been in Pro Tools my entire journey. I started in 05 at Sound Dogs Toronto, which was Post City Sound, like a post-production place. And like the second I got there, they were just like, you're learning Pro Tools or you're leaving. There was no other choice at the time. It was just like, this is what you use. And it was very largely in post-production, but it was like, you're using this and that's it. So unfortunately, I've kind of been locked in there the whole time. So I'm a little biased, but I also I know it so well because I've been in it, Okay,
Jason, you've got some analog stuff behind you. You got things with buttons, so you're an Ableton. You ultimately end at Ableton, which obviously was not around when you first got going. What is your DAW adventure? How did you?
My DAW adventure was Cubase 2 on a black and white Apple clone computer in 1992 with an opcode MIDI processor.
Wow.
The whole computer had 2 megs of hard disk space, and it was something like 16K of RAM, something stupid like that. And I could make about a half an hour composition. At the time, I was getting into electronic music, and experimental just means I don't really know what I'm doing yet. And so I had a lot of access to friends' equipment at the time. I was young. I was like 15, 16, learning MIDI back in the 90s. And, I got a multi-timbral synthesizer called the Orbit from Emu. And that gave me 16 MIDI channels. I could make everything I wanted with this Cubase and that one synth. And I used that all the way through till about 97, 98. And that's when I saw people using the MPC 2000, and I couldn't really get into that price point, but there was a poor man's MPC called the SU 700 from Yamaha. And that kind of let me get away from the sequencing, because I started noticing that I had been arranging the same way every song repetitively. I got locked in the process of overthinking things. So I kind of abandoned that and tried to go with 9 drum machines and 5 samplers and a couple sequencers and stuff. And that's the sort of schizophrenic octopus trying to get all of this connected. And the SU 700 was really cool at bringing things all together and saying, hey, whatever you're doing here, I'm going to record 40 loops, and whatever you would have would splay across these buttons. You could turn them on or off, and it was like you'd perform a board mix live, and that's how you live arranged. And going from super arranged Cubase stuff into that was like, okay, live again, right? You can let your attention span drive it, and how long you want to linger in a moment, and how you make your transition happen by unmuting that and doing all these other combo depth. Yeah,
love it. Cool.
And then Ableton.
Nice.
And then Ableton. So, okay, Chris, how did you get in? I see a stack of analog gear in the back there too.
Yeah.
What was your DAW adventure?
My DAW adventure before even going to production school, I was part of a band. The band leader had a home studio with Cubase VST at the time, back in 97 or 98. So that I was first introduced to a DAW and like computer recording at that time. And then in production school, we studied on we're using Pro Tools and Digital Performer.
Hmm.
But everyone, all the students, all had a Cubase cracked version,
Interesting.
which was Cubase SX back then, 2001. And yeah, so afterwards, once I was done with school, since I already knew a bit about Cubase, I just sticked around and bought a license, and that was it for me. At some point I did buy a license of Pro Tools 9 and 10 afterwards. Mixed a few projects on Pro Tools, but just came back to Cubase right after.
I love
So
it.
that was my
That's a classic journey,
yeah,
and
exactly.
we'll come back to the cracked software as being like the gateway. I think that's an important topic. Michael, you have a very strong post production experience and strong post production. What like how did you get into DAWs? You're also, for those who don't know, an amazing keyboard player. So I imagine there's some MIDI in there as well. Tell us your story.
Well, the first DAW, strictly speaking, would have been Sound Tools SE, running on some sort of a little Mac, something or other. The old style Macs with the 9-inch black and white screens. So that would have been the predecessor to Pro Tools. That would have been the first true DAW. But I think honorable mention has to go back to my experience of using a computer to make audio or sound or music. Would be back to the very birth of what was originally called Notator by the German company C Labs before they became eMagic, before it became Notator Logic, before Apple bought it. So I date all the way back to 97 with Notator running on an Atari ST, still the only personal computer to ship with MIDI 5-pin DIN connectors on the motherboard.
Amazing.
Yeah. Pro Tools, though, has been the story of my professional life, of course, in part because the broadcaster I worked for nearly 30 years was an Avid house.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're doing post-production and you're alongside media composers, that story is largely told for you. But also legitimately, there's a good argument for the fact that until very recently, Pro Tools was the undisputed king of being that Swiss Army knife. I think arguably that position at the top of the charts is at risk at the moment, but not from not from a market stance perspective, just literally the capabilities of the tool set. I'm a big fan of your mock T-shirts that you used to make, Anthony. But yeah, I think Avid's throne is available for anyone who wants to come take it. But I think they're unquestionably on it, and for good reasons, given their stance across multiple media industries. It really is the lingua franca of DAWs. I for a long time, when I was a hiring manager, I told young kids almost cheekily, don't put on your resume Pro Tools. If you want a job in the audio business, I'm going to assume Pro Tools. Put on your resume the other DAWs that or the other rare or unusual software that you have mastery over. I don't want to know that you think Pro Tools, because I guarantee you I've forgotten more about Pro Tools than you know. So let's just assume that Pro Tools.
Interesting. I think that's so Michael is like, was there well, here I'll tell my journey. So I started with Cool Edit Pro. Everybody loves Cool Edit Pro. Cool Edit Pro became Adobe Audition, and then I used a thing called Software Audio Workshop, which was the Saw Classic. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Saw, but it was one guy who did absolutely everything. Then I got into Cakewalk. I don't know if I'm just mentioning the ones that nobody else has mentioned. To your point, Michael, everybody had a copy of. Everybody had a copy of Cubase. Yeah, that's true. Cakewalk was one of those things. But yeah, where it started to really, so was there a tipping point? I think it was alluded to that a lot of these digital audio workstations started off as MIDI sequencers. right? So Jason, you alluded to that, like, you come from, and it sounds like we all come from that background where we did have these MIDI devices hooked up to our sequencers. Maybe talk about the transition from sequencer to digital audio workstation. What was truly mind blowing and revolutionary about that type of thing?
I never thought about using like music production software so tape heavy. In my world, it was always, and a lot of early electronic guys were just get a whole bunch of things running, get access to a really nice Soundcraft mixer or whatever big desk you could get, and mix it down live and put it on that and get it out and squish it, right? Like it was a little more fast and dirty, right? So, and there wasn't, all right, 65 tracks of like people doing stuff on top of it. It's sort of, so the idea wasn't like, all right, I have to get a tape deck to record all my synths to, and then da da da. No, you just skip that step and mixed it down live and did your thing. So when Ableton came around and gave a, like, if a spreadsheet made love to Pro Tools approach of this honeycomb of little slots where you could place non-linear strips of recordings and have them all play like you're doing Duck Duck Goose on these little loops and stuff, and telling them when to start and stop. Everyone has its own orbit. That blew my mind. I didn't really think that way. Still, I've always, linear is what we're doing, right? Song starts here, it ends there. Stuff happens in between, right? And there's a weird process that I know I got stuck doing as an electronic musician, and you're kind of thinking on like a top level as a composer, like all the different parts. You have to think differently and all the rest of it as you're arranging it. But I would always get stuck with like this big thing I built, and it sounded like music, and it started here and it went there, but it was contrived, or my relationship with it was weird because I like knew too much about how much I worked on it, and getting into using live or a program that was a little more loop based and jammy gave me more freedom to explore what a song could be before I decided. And it's sort of like the analogy is like, all these other programs are the studio you're walking into. It's $500 an hour. Give me your good song, right? Or we have to write it first. Wait, hold on. Okay, and live brings it back a step to like 3 weeks ago with someone's cottage and a bunch of people jamming and working out parts, and there's nothing but beer and sticky notes and just instruments and eyeballs going, hey, you go there, all that stuff. And so having a more loose approach to sequencing and not just getting stuck at the timeline for starting the song, right? It's a weird thing, right? Like as engineers, you're meeting people who have different relationships with their music. They might have a really amazing idea of what it's going to be, but there's the demo, and you have to like expand it to that. Or as a solo artist, you have to think in terms of different, how to play like a bass player, how to play like a keys player, what your vocals will be, all that all at once. And it's weird to over arrange it at the beginning because you get stuck with like this bad baby that you have to watch grow up with bad posture or something. And like you didn't really change it. You can overthink it too, and you get stuck with that. So live really gave me this free approach to perform like a band, as a one-person band, and figure it out before I actually made a decision, and then got stuck with it, right? You guys ever had that? Yeah.
Yeah. So Chris, you're a drummer.
Yes.
You didn't do what Jason did, where he was trying to create a the MIDI sequencer. You were probably wanting to record your drums or record your band. Your journey is a little bit different than that MIDI side
Yeah,
of things.
totally.
To explain how the DAW is audio first for you opposed to being a sequencer.
Yeah, totally audio first. Yeah, I'm a drummer, so that was part of my recording journey, just record real drums. So yeah, all my setup turns around that, even now I have like everything runs on my laptop. So, which is good because I can mix a song straight from the studio with my studio monitors. I can jump outside the studio, bring the laptop with me with a another interface. I have another interface set up into my drum room where I just bring the laptop with me, connect everything. I have a bunch of processing also, mics, all set up, ready to go. I connect and I start playing, right away. So it's yeah, I did a lot of audio stuff more than media and sequencing.
So okay, so and Michael, in a post production environment, you know, a DAW is a sequencer from a video point of view, and from a post production point of view, you're sequencing the video that's being presented to you. How is your journey different, or how is the tribalism of post production differ from it coming from a sequencer world?
Well, I guess the disclaimer is virtually all of my post-production experience, and there's a lot of it, was in the context of factual post-production in a broadcast context. So I just offer that to suggest that the experience of someone who's spent a career in cinematic or dramatic post-production is going to maybe answer the question very, very differently. As you well know, Anthony, from your recent past, in broadcast, turnaround is king. Mm-hmm. How many seconds or frames must exist between when something is done and when it can be on air? Right. And so now you just start working back from air and start defining what's done at each stage. When does the editor have picture lock? How quickly from picture lock can I get the video sequence and the decomposed audio material via an AAF or originally an OMF? Mm-hmm. How quickly can I be doing the work I need to do? And when I'm done and the mix is finished, how quickly can we create that back as a new synthetic piece of media and get that on its way into air? That's ultimately the deciding factor for enterprise scale media operations. And that's why, even if there was a better DAW, until someone comes up with a better NLE for the enterprise environment than Avid, for instance, mm-hmm. well, we were going to be locked. We were going to be heartbeated together. In fact, so much so that I never looked at picture coming out of Pro Tools. I was always looking at picture coming out of a media composer that was also in my mix room that was satellite slaved to Pro Tools. And that was because we couldn't even afford the amount of time it would take to export a QuickTime for me to import it into Pro Tools, or the additional compute requirements of having the Pro Tools computer, in addition to managing maybe hundreds of tracks, also trying to play out picture. And so, consistency of operation and how quickly can you work was always kind of the how fast could the workflow be? Not how fast could I work. How quick could those workflow steps be executed? That was really largely the defining factor for us.
Very cool. Ross, you said it's very much like a tape deck to you. Were you ever locking Pro Tools and sequencers and anything to tape or jam syncing? What's your experience with it coming from a sequencer over to it being a digital audio workstation?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, I'm a guitar player, so for me it was more always about like recording a band. It was always trying to record a moment in time, or in the post-production world, it was kind of like Mike is saying, where you're chasing the picture, or you're sort of slaving in that world. And like for post-production, I really don't know that there is a better alternative, and for all the reasons Mike said, but mostly because like the big time stuff is all done in Media Composer, and like that Avid owns that, and Avid owns Pro Tools, so they're all very much talking to each other and compatible, and everything kind of makes sense there. Like even taking something from Adobe Premiere and putting it into Pro Tools is, even that's a bit tough. Like you got to use an AF or an OMF or whatever. But like even that was always a little strange. So whenever it was Media Composer coming to Pro Tools, it was always just it was perfect. But from a music standpoint, which is really where I spend most of my time, I feel like obviously I'm a Pro Tools champion, but like to me it's really about the quickness and the speed, and like what gets you to that end product faster. And so for me, it's like I want the client to see me working. I want to keep everything kind of working, within the boundaries of the creativity of the session. And then when I'm done, it's like I know how to edit super quick in Pro Tools so I can go through my shortcuts and get the final product done. But like, it's also delivery. Like most people that are hiring me, they know I'm going to work in analog. They know I'm mixing in analog. So when they deliver sessions to me, it's usually in Pro Tools already, because that would typically be the DAW that you would sequence to analog hardware. And I find that when someone gives me a Pro Tools session, it's I can be up and running in like half an hour to actually start a mix, and like kind of conceivably finish it that day. Whereas a lot of time, if I'm being delivered Logic files or files from other DAWs where you're exporting waves and you're bringing them in, I find that it actually really interrupts the workflow, and you're spending more time sort of going and translating between different DAWs, and I think that's the biggest issue for me with workflow, and why it's obviously it's your preference to be in whatever DAW, but if you can work within the confines of what you're expected to deliver in, it just makes the team make a lot more sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. I think we got some nods coming across the group here, and then we got Jason, who's an Ableton Live certified trainer, who's kind of like, yeah, whatever. It's but like, is that interchange the reason why people get into it? Maybe Jason, you're an instructor on this. Like, do people come and they have like a Pro Tools mindset? Do they come and they're like, I'm a Pro Tools operator and I can't learn something else because I'm unable to do that? And what are your thoughts on like the elitism of Pro Tools operators, where you've had so much success and appreciation for something like Ableton?
So most of the people I would have met in that capacity were probably trying to use Pro Tools on stage.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and you can imagine having a little message come up and say, you're not quite using your buffer perfectly to the most amazing it possibly could be, so I'm just going to stop the sequencer, right? That kind of stuff was mostly like, I don't give a shit what this thing does, as long as it doesn't do that, right? Stay on, please, right? Like,
be reliable. So Michael, is the reliability part of the workflow that is Pro Tools, or is it about
not the question is reliability. It's just at that moment you don't want anything like that coming up. It's working reliable. It's just letting you know, by the way, you can probably change your buffer if you want to, because I had a little drop out there. But
it's definitely reliable, though. That's definitely an aspect to it. 100%. If I'm fronting a band and they're going to play back their own tracks, I don't say, okay, I say, what are you playing them back on? And if someone tells me they intend to play back tracks on stage from Pro Tools, I got a bunch of other questions, and that's probably not going to happen. Understood. If they say Ableton, I go, okay, what's the interface? How many stems are you giving us? Reliability is absolutely a thing if you ever work live. And then you have to leave Pro Tools behind.
That's it.
Whether you're recording or playing back, because it's not a question of if Pro Tools is going to crash, it's when.
So I got my first job working in the crazy industry in 2006 when I joined Nelly Furtado's band, and they asked me to be the playback guy, and it was because she put out an album called Loose, and she wanted to be loose with her approach, and it was just at the perfect moment. Ableton Live version 5 had just added the ability to jump around markers. And I was like, well, we could do this. And then I just transformed all their stuff into Live, put them on a big timeline, organized it all, markers, MIDI map, all that. And we were off to the races. And we, as a band, were able to learn how to bring a sequencer on stage. And I was the weird one. Like, everyone had a digital performer. I jumped in from boom to nothing to like doing all these award shows and everything with Nelly. So I got a chance to see everyone else's systems, and it was like Logic, a Pro Tools here and there, and Digital Performer being like one of the mainstays. And Ableton was this weird punk in the corner that was just like a funny name, like you're just making stuff up now. What's that, And it's watching it take over the last 20, 25 years now, like 28 since then, 20 years or so. It's night and day. I mean, and it's weird. Like, I bring 2 of everything everywhere I go, mostly 3 of everything everywhere I go, and I never switch over. Knock on wood, but never. It's like 0.001% fail rate, and that's when you're doing something stupid, or it's trippy to have that be like the mainstay of something. Like, you know, I don't think anyone's really ever lost faith in it.
Interesting. The
Yeah.
Chris, you know, you're running Cubase, and you mentioned, you know, it being one of the first that was available for PC. You know, I'm sure you've gone through 35 iterations of a computer to get where you are right now. Like, is there, like, are you a Cubase Mac user, or are you a Cubase PC user?
Yeah, I did both. I started on PC. I built my own PCs also. At some point, I built a Hackintosh, and then got back to Windows, and now I'm on Mac, you know, so the
Okay.
laptop is fully Mac. So yeah, I'm now officially a Cubase Mac user.
Okay, okay. So I imagine, you know, Ross, at your studio, you've got a Mac running all of this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
tell me about tell me about your Macs. Like, what how many Macintoshes has this group of 5 people purchased across their lifetime?
That's crazy. I mean, it's probably an unfortunate amount. Like when I first started working at Post City and all that, I had like one of the first Intel ones. You know, when they first made them Intel, the laptops.
Yeah.
That was the first one I had, and then it's like since then, it's like you literally probably get one every 4 years. You probably have to replace it, right? So like the studio computer is running on one of those 2020 Mac Pros, like the towers,
Okay.
and that's super stable. Although I will say it's not an M series, but it's still Intel, right? And it's doing fine. It's doing great. Like I even installed one in Doug McClement's truck. You guys know Doug. We put one in his, and his has not let him down. It's running great, and he's using it all the time, like live for recording, at the Junos and stuff like that, and it's working great here. But I will say, like you see someone bring in a laptop with an M series, whatever M3 or 4, and it's like it's incredible how much faster they actually they actually are. So I think it's becoming time to upgrade yet again. So it's probably 4 to 6 years. It's like the cycle of when you have to replace them.
Yeah, something like that. I would agree with that.
Four
I
to
bought
six years.
mine.
Oof.
Yeah, I bought mine like refurbished 3 years ago, an M1 computer, like a laptop, MacBook Pro, and it still runs like fluently, um, no problems whatsoever. So I don't think I would go back to a PC, especially when working with a laptop, because at first that's why I made the move to Mac. It's because I needed something quiet,
Yeah.
that I can, and that was the main thing on getting the MacBook Pro. It's so quiet.
I get that. I get that. Michael, how many MacBooks have you gone through in your career? Since you started using these DAW things.
Yeah, an embarrassing number, and a similarly embarrassing number of, generations of Digidesign and Avid hardware.
Mm-hmm.
I I could probably open a little baby museum, although that would. Anyways, yeah.
Okay.
It's called vintage digital.
I
Lots
got
and
you
lots
all
and
beat
lots.
in one weird
Yes.
respect.
I was going to get to you, Jason. Yeah, go.
I'm a klepto
Okay.
Mac.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a weird term, but I keep taking computers from bands and keeping them. So I've had like 7 MacBook Pros from Nelly Furtado.
Yeah.
I have 8 MacBook Pros that I just kept from Frank Ocean, and like I'm using like the most stankiest of like weird like Jay-Z people give you a Mac kind of Mac that I just flew home with because it was the pandemic like starting, and I just
Yeah.
never got a chance to give them back. But yeah, Macs.
Anthony, I've bought so many Macs that I just put my hands on an Apple Newton.
Holy, that'll be a yeah. That's did I see
So
you have the original case for that thing too?
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man, see, it's the case
I,
that people.
I've given Apple some money over the years.
Wow.
I heard a statistic that the average Apple user is $80,000 to Apple over their lifetime, and that's average. So,
Wow.
so okay, with every time we jump into a new Mac and a new OS, and you go from the Motorola to the Intel and the Intel to the M5, you've effectively got a new kernel, a new version of Pro Tools, a new gotcha. Um, Ross, you're running. You've got a commercial studio on the go here. What does that do to your business?
The idea of like of continuing to have to buy new Macs, that's what
Well,
you're saying?
continual improvement that you don't have control over. Like if I saran wrapped a Pro Tools rig from 1994 running 7.1 and only used that and did not read any mix magazines for plugins and kind of froze it in time, you know, it might work still, and it might be,
Right.
but like that continual improvement. How does that impact your? How does that impact your business?
Well, so here's the thing. It really depends on, I think, the direction of the deliverable. Because like because of all the new Atmos stuff, the Dolby immersive, like the Dolby Atmos and then the immersive idea, you kind of have to have a newer Pro Tools system to be able to be compatible with that. And I'll just as from a commercial standpoint, I'll say this: like I was down at Criteria Studios in Miami. Do you know that studio? That's where like the Allman Brothers did the records, like the Bee Gees, like Saturday Night Fever and all that. So it was all done. It's like a classic studio, right? And that place down there is surviving on legacy, and the whole studio is like still running the old 192 HD TDM systems and all their Macs, right? And so we did a tour of this place with like 7 studios, the greatest studios that in the world. And you look at there, and they all have these TDM systems. And I was like, well, how would you do an Atmos mix in there? And he goes, well, we don't offer that. So they've pretty much frozen their rig in what would have been probably 2009, 2010, and haven't upgraded it all. So for them, they're playing off the legacy of their space and everything that they have there, and that is totally okay for them because those systems didn't turn into pumpkins overnight. They just don't have the ability to do sort of the newer features. And like Pro Tools has advanced a lot with ARA technology and to being able to do all the stuff behind the scenes. But like down there, they don't care about that. All they really want to know is, can I still record records through the big consoles? And so like for me, it's kind of like that, except like obviously I'm trying to stay current as well and continue to mix in Atmos and be able to just kind of use the new and latest technology that Avid is supplying Pro Tools with. So I'm trying to stay as current as I can, but like my OS is definitely backdated. I think I'm on Ventura, and I'm not even sure what we're on right now, but like I'm way behind in terms of that. And while the new Pro Tools is still running on that, I'm not really upgrading as fast as I used to. I remember I used to be like the second it would go, I would upgrade, right? But now that it's so sometimes buggy and crashy and like no one really knows what's going on when they first open it. So like a lot of the time I let everybody kind of get the bugs out. Maybe a couple months later I'll do the upgrade, right? But as far as the hardware, until that computer doesn't allow me to keep running the newest version of it, I probably won't upgrade until it needs to, right? Because I mean it's still quite quick.
There you go.
But it is very much the older system. It's an Intel system, right?
Yeah, I completely agree. I did a 2020 studio computer, ripped out the old one, put it in the rack, put the Pro Tools cards in, fired it up, and nothing worked. And then I had to uninstall it and put it back, and I like dressed the rack, changed it, and it was just like disheartening. Jason, when you're doing a tour, is there an anxiety of upgrading? Is there like you say, Ross, at a certain age or at a certain point of wisdom in your life, you stop doing the latest and greatest because it can have a cascading financial impact. Jason, what do you do with these systems in order to kind of guarantee that 100% reliability in your world?
It's common sense. Try and back things up, and if you're going to switch your system, it's one of two things. You had a good idea and you just wanted to do something new, or you had a problem and you have to get something new, because those are two different things. And if you had a problem, you'll accept whatever comes with it because it's already a problem. And if you can avoid it, then you'll still, have an efficient crossover. Don't do it in the middle of a tour. Seen that happen. I've been flown in to fix things because of things like that, and it just came down to like drivers or something dumb. But like, guys, come on, But like, it's scary, and I mean, I got 19 stories just popped into my head. I built Metric's playback system, and like I get a call like a day later, and they're like texting me a picture of like it crumpled because of a forklift and an American Airlines problem, right? And So how do you what? You didn't have a backup of both of your backups? Like of course you didn't. Like it was all in the box,
Yep.
right? So like learning to say like treat your show like it's the football. Like I pack my Pelican with clothes and check it, and then I take my laptops with me as carry on. You know what I mean? And that those like constant things like that. But like in terms of like switching over and having issues and staying up with things, there's more of a tendency to not do any of that. If it ain't broken, don't break it.
Right.
Kind of fix it kind of
If
problems.
it ain't broken, don't break it. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
sorry, Jason, you had another thought there. Go.
No, it's just like coming from like you're already like doing that when you go play live and touch a computer and just be like like you're bringing that much anxiety to the situation because you've made music with a MIDI sequencer or run Pro Tools. You know what I mean? Like that's what it's the preconceived stuff you bring in with you, your traumas you enter the building with.
I love it. Michael, when you're dealing in a large org that's doing production like you know, I'm sure you've had this where you have like 100 operators come to you and say, "Look, why don't we have like version like 32 on here? Why are we running version 31?" But you have to have reliability and consistency across platforms to guarantee the workflow. What kind of lessons learned have you had where? What kind of lessons have you had at a large org that's doing NLE plus DAW work all at the same time?
Well, I mean, nobody's going to be surprised to learn that in a television plant, the audio department's like the kid on the bridge playing the banjo in Deliverance. So, what we want to do with upgrades is immaterial. What matters is, will our upgrade break the workflow? And inevitably that meant we had to wait for Media Composer, and all the editors are yelling they want their new version, but actually you can't upgrade Media Composer because Interplay, which is the media asset management, or the storage system, need to be upgraded first. And that's a big, heavy lift. And so now you're waiting a year to do an update because some back-end system that if it's not upgraded first, none of the clients on the edge can upgrade without bricking everything. And said differently, I'm going to guess, Anthony, you're in the same boat. I've had dozens of multi-million-dollar productions held hostage because of tech support problems with MI grade USB audio interfaces and bullshit consumer laptops that are grafted onto the edge of $1 million consoles in $20 million OB trucks. And that's the show. That laptop right there and that Focusrite, who gives a shit, is the show.
Yeah.
And it's the very definition of the weak link.
So, Michael, you said the word interplay, and a lot of people don't know that Avid has middleware that exists between. It's so funny. You have to say it like Avid has middleware between Avid and Pro Tools. So maybe give the listeners, the viewers, like a secret insight to the world of Avid that costs millions of dollars.
Yeah. Interplay is, which is a function of something now called Media Central. Media Central is essentially a software portal into the Avid ecosystem in a big enterprise. And so everyone from producers to directors to editors to sound people to writers, everybody's going to be in this one piece of software. Gives them customized presentations. So a writer, for instance, maybe only sees one little video window because they're watching raw footage and they're writing their script. Meanwhile, an editor uses Media Central to interrogate something called Media or Interplay, which is the media asset manager. So when the producer says, "Oh, I need last night's hockey game. I want to take some footage from last night's hockey game for this thing we're cutting," the editor goes to Interplay and is able to search for the recording of last night's game and can check that out and bring that material into his sequence without robbing anyone else of it. And then that carries downstream into post sound, where he's still having to export a double AF from his Media Composer sequence, his Avid timeline, rather. He calls it a timeline.
Yeah.
He still has to export a AAF so that we get the decomposed material with handles, but the video sequence, he doesn't have to do anything with. He checks that into Interplay as, hey, this video is finished. I can check it out saying, hey, now the post-production is in progress. If someone in a control room is looking desperately for this content, they can see it in their rundown in something called iNews, also an Avid product, also federated into Media Central, and that's the newsroom automation system. And they can see that the next item that they're waiting for is red, meaning I haven't finished it. I haven't checked the sequence back in. And so it really is a big,
so
a big loop around the planet.
It's like a live performance tool, but on a enterprise scale. It's like Google Cloud for video and Pro Tools at the same time.
Exactly.
I get it. So, Chris, when you've gone through a whole bunch of different variations of Cubase, one of the things that they support and kind of pioneer is VST. Can you tell me, like, is there workflows in your life, in your world that just are like 100% dependent on VST?
I would say, yeah, plugins now with VST3.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would be the rest, like virtual instruments. I do play with and produce with some virtual instruments for sure. I do mainly audio, but yeah, I do rely on virtual instruments and MIDI. So I would say that, yeah.
So VST3, like for those who don't know, like what is the kind of evolution of VST plugins? Like, did they start with, you know, like MIDI sequencers, and maybe Jason can jump in here and talk a little bit about this. Like, how did they evolve? You know, from like built-in studio devices to outboard gear. What you know, what kind of plugins do you collect? What kind of stuff do you insist as being part of your workflow?
Well, yeah, I guess it was outboard gear first, and then virtual instruments, and then they got more complicated, and then I think the various capabilities of different programming languages through VST, VST2, VST3, and the inclusion of, I guess, MPE, and a little bit more of the polyphonic stuff for editing. But yeah, like I have a love-hate relationship with VST because I want to have access to something that is unique and not shared. So, but also there's some really amazing stuff out there, and you want to find a way to use it in a way that's not as, you know, obvious, but more transparent or whatever. But I guess I started my experience with VSTs through like the cracked full scenario, and yeah, so I think with that comes a whole lot of having to fix your computer a lot because you installed a million viruses and whatnot. Yeah. And what was kind of funky is like having everything as a VST crack person and then not using any of it.
Yeah,
versus
the
paying
thrill
for
of
something.
Collecting.
Yeah,
I totally get it.
Like this thrill of collecting, or the fear of missing out, of going, I got to get what everyone else has. I have these waves things. I want to get the waves. I want to get the wave. You know, right? And just riding that wave as like, hey, you know, I had a unique experience watching all this stuff come out, figuring out how to use it, figuring out how to crack it, all that stuff. And you know, should be in jail 25 times over for just like, you know, that sentence. But like, it's interesting because we learned that way, right? And so many I never had access to the bulk barn of synthesizers, right? You know, and suddenly it was like $100 million worth of synths right there for you, and you can learn your way through. So like, we kind of owe something to we owe more than the value of that VST for the crack, at least.
It's really good, Jason. You know, like you know, it comes down to, like, you're right. There are plugins that are instruments, and then the interesting thing about VST is it's half instruments and it's half, you know, audio processors. So I imagine, Chris, you deal more on the audio processor side, like
mainly, yes.
Yeah. So I'm sure you had a similar journey as Jason. You know, you tried everything. You came.
Oh man, yeah.
You got what with, you know, and where do you end up? Like, you know, where did you end up in your collection of VSTs?
Well, I had to go to rehab at some point, I guess.
It does sound like a sickness. Yes. Two
Yeah,
VSTs. Yeah.
yeah, at the time, at the beginning, yeah, everyone, like all my co-students, they all had a bunch of cracked VSTs and plugins and all that stuff, so it was pretty easy to get a hold of a bunch of plugins and like Jason was saying, not use half of them, if not more.
Mhm.
And now that I'm doing a lot of educational stuff on YouTube and courses and stuff, now it's like I get a lot of plugins by companies directly,
Right.
a bunch of NFRs and stuff. So I got back into the same loop in a way. Not because I want to, but it's like it happens. So
Right. The fear of missing out. Michael, in a Pro Tools, or maybe I'll ask this one to Ross. Ross, like in a Pro Tools environment, like piracy is not really possible in certain, like, I'm sure it's possible, like Jason's eyebrows went up there. It's more of like an elitist club of like, hey there, look at me, I paid for all of these things and I'm using these officially. What is your take as a Pro Tools HD user who pays that Pro Tools tax to keep their business up and running?
Right. I mean, that's a good point. It is kind of like a tax, right? It's like you want to run Pro Tools, you're going to need to have the subscriptions and all that stuff to make it work. I think again, it comes back to reliability and efficiency. It's like there are cracks. You can get certain cracks for certain software. It's tricky though, because you'll run it and it'll be the wrong time when it just destroys everything and then it crashes. And Pro Tools wants to run perfectly all the time, and those were what those errors that Jason was talking about that will pop up at the wrong time. It's like your buffer is not. It wants to be 100% perfect, and it won't play unless it's 100% perfect, and that is great because when it is working perfectly, it's awesome. But when it isn't, it's quite horrific, and nothing is worse than being stuck in like a plugin loop. So like I learned pretty quick in the Pro Tools world that even though there are some crackle ones, you kind of have to pay the tax and buy them because like they aren't always like, it's kind of like Pro Tools has to have the perfect OS and then the perfect version of Pro Tools for that OS and then all the plugins that are compatible with that version and that OS. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
It's like a laboratory. You have to have all your experiments in a perfectly controlled, sterile environment, or else you're going to corrupt your experiment that you're doing.
Yeah. So basically, it just is not possible to run any series of cracks reliably with that. So it sort of forces you to get up there. But I mean, like, I do feel better having owned all these. I mean, I will say when I first started, we ended up buying the Waves, the Mercury when we first started out, right? Like way back in 2009 or 8 or whatever. And I remember we bought it, and like the day after we bought the big pack, it like went on sale. It was like half price. We were like, so can we get our half of that? But like, oh no, it's already So we lost, it was like 15 grand or something. Like that was crazy.
Yeah.
And now you look at it, and you can buy all these with subscriptions now, which I do think is the right way to approach it if you're not 100% sure if this is for you, right? Buying the subscription, whether it's Pro Tools or the plugins, it's a great way to figure out what you don't like and what you don't need. And so I've always found that to be like, people were like, oh, I hate it. I hate doing subscription. But I actually think that's the best way to kind of learn. And then you buy what you really feel like you need instead of being told, this is great. And in, like when I teach Pro Tools at Harris, and when I teach the students, like they always talk about plugins. They refer to plugins and virtual instruments as VSTs, which is what you guys were just talking about.
Yeah.
But like they see it as like they say, oh, so can I run VSTs in Pro Tools? Where they think, can I run the program I'm running in Ableton or Cubase or whatever? Can I run that in Pro Tools? And really, what I, like when I say no, they kind of their heart sinks. But it's like, it's just the other wrapper. It's like the program is this, and then it has a VST or VST3, an AU for Logic. It's got a AAX for Pro Tools. It's still running the same software. It's just not called a VST in the Pro Tools world. So like that's a big misconception too, where people think, oh, I can't run a VST, but really you are running the virtual instrument. It's just in a different wrapper, and there's obviously things that are exclusive to the specific DAW, but with Pro Tools, it's like you kind of run the third party stuff the same as you would anything.
Michael, go.
I just want to throw in a mention. I realize we're meant to be talking about DAWs, but I'm in a world where DAWs ate large format consoles lunches for a couple of decades. to the point where if you're not tracking or an analog purist or in possession of a great commercial studio like Ross, you work in the box. Everything's in the software. And plugins of any description, VSTs among them, are a big part of that story, and you get to design your own adventure. Pro Tools doesn't give you a console. Logic doesn't give you a console. You build the console, and every console then is a bespoke combination of processes. But particularly in the music world, first, everybody got so attracted to and really addicted to mixing through this highly customized assembly of plugins to create your sound that suddenly these artists couldn't perform live without the plugins.
Right.
And where, from the early 90s until the mid 2010s, really, if you lived all in the box, you all were also in business with waves. That meant you also paid a waves tax every so often, especially in the early days when they had some really curious upgrade financials. But we all had to deal with waves all the time. And then finally, the ecosystem broadened out to the point where if you didn't want to use wave plugins, you could probably find something that was pretty close from another manufacturer. Except then this live thing came in. Now everybody needs plugins to mix live. And guess what? Now everyone's back
to
marching to the waves
Yeah.
tune because of SoundGrid and the fact that nobody wants to trust Pro Tools typically to a live environment. But if I must have plugins, and now there's finally some options out there with the Fourier engine and a few other things. But in general, our appreciation for and requirements of our content creation have been so changed over the last 25 years by DAWs and plugins particularly, that now, regardless of whether you're in a studio, in a non-live environment, or if you're live on air or in front of an audience, you basically can't get out of bed without plugins anymore.
You can't talk about DAWs like at the beginning you said it was an entire studio. An entire studio also includes a rack full of gear. I see racks of gear behind you, Chris and Jason. You got some outboard gear, and I see it looks like a Universal Audio digitally modeled amplifier behind you, Ross, and that one right there. And it's kind of like you can't get away from the idea of processing, and you're right when it comes to the live side of things. So yeah, maybe Michael, is DAW the wrong word now? Like, is it like to Jason it's a PlayStation, right? Like this is something bigger than just digital audio. Like it is a studio in a box. So maybe we've been using the wrong word. Jason, what would you like? You don't have a DAW, you have a performance companion. People play guitar and people play synthesizers. Like, what is it to you?
I'm the one using the program that's got the word live in it, so it's another planet. It's a DAW that's trying to be an instrument.
It's a DAW
That's their whole
opinion.
ethos. Yeah. And they look at it like that. It's an instrument that happens to be a DAW, and it was built by two German dudes who were in a techno band, and they were stressing about how to play all their stuff live, and then they got really analytical and said, "Why don't we do like a grid? Okay, great, and put all the objects in. Da 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 da. Boom, spreadsheet meets tape deck." And at the beginning, it never did MIDI, so it was purely to solve the how do I take these chunks of time and resequence them and stuff idea, and away from the here's my arrangement, then the next one, then the next one. That's the typical live presentation. When you see a band, it's song after song after song. If they're a cool band, they'll mix them a little bit together here and there. They'll do a medley. All right, cool. But generally, it's start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, switch guitar, la la la. Right. So live kept it going. You never really had to stop. You can just keep a jam space moving, whatever kind of music you play with now. I mean, I work with country artists who are really exploiting live as a playback tool, but also a way to MIDI map all of your vocal processing cues for every song. So
right.
There's a lot of ways that it's what's that? Is that a DAW now? Right? Like yeah, it's a thing DAWs could do like in the 15th like little corner, but like the main guts are transform a song from an idea to a finished product, right? Like,
I love it. Chris, you have a YouTube channel and you deal with, I imagine, it's rude to call them bedroom producers. Like, I'm sure Ross, you've slept at that studio. I'm sure Jason, your bedroom's around the corner, and Chris, Michael, you look like you got a couch there. You've slept on a couple times. Like, is bedroom studio an old term now that considering like you can have craziness, like you can have 1,000
Yeah.
tracks in your bedroom right now, and that was 500 times more than some of the studios back in the day. What has some of your channel taught you about the difference of the cliche of bedroom people, bedroom artists?
Yeah, yeah. I would say it's probably the wrong term now. Like, most of my audience, it's all home studios, whether it's in their bedroom or they have like a dedicated room for their studios. But I think this is like what music production is now. There's less and less commercial studios, and a lot of people produce music in their own space. So there's a lot of that. So I don't know. I would change the term from bedroom producer to something else.
Hey,
I think home studio is more, I would say, fit more with.
Bedroom producer was like, an Apollo in a dream,
No, exactly.
as opposed to like really good at it. Like, it's usually like people who've made a studio in their house is purely like, to be honest with you, I kind of wish this was in my house. Like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
no part of me loves this where it is. If I could move, and if the landlords can hear me, if I could move right now, I would.
Mm,
I'd get the hell out of here. But it's impossible to do that the kind of work like with live off the floor bands and having proper isolation and everything. It's impossible to do that at your house to any degree without affecting your family, really, right? Like, there's just no way that you'd have to move in to all the rooms in the house and sort of expand outwards, right? So I think the only way to do sort of this style of music that I sort of specialize in is to have something like this. But I would love to find a way to not do that. I'm sure that there's a way. It's really hard to.
yeah, like when I was back in Quebec before moving here, the studio I had was like, because I had clients coming in all the time, producing, recording music. I produced a bunch of albums with these clients, and my kids were young at the time, so they were like 5 years old.
yeah,
And so when we built that house, we moved in back in 2006. We actually thought of it, so everything was super soundproofed, building a box within a box. So, and that was the only way for me
Right.
to be able to work with clients and work late at night, even around the clock. Sometimes it happens, and you don't want to. First, you want your kids to stay kids and run around and jump
yeah.
without being, without disturbing you. So yeah, so in that case, there's a lot of investment to do. If someone wants to have like a full kind of project studio with clients at home, yeah, I would say put up your pocket, your wallet, and just invest into soundproofing. That's the only way. Now my reality is way different. My kids are the adults and out of the house, and I only have my wife working here. I don't work with clients anymore.
Right.
That comes in apart from mixing clients, which everything is online now. So my life is different. So I don't need that fully soundproofed room. So
I'm with you. I'm of the opinion that everything sounds best right before it explodes. So I look
mhm.
at Ross has a JMP back there and a 100-watt bassman head, and it's like that thing sounds only good when it's 100 dB and shaking the floor, and so have DAWs become emulators of studio, like they've always been like a complement to studios, but now are they becoming emulators of studios and studio equipment? Ross, maybe speak to a bit. Like I see the universal audio thing behind you, and it's like the computer is now part of your guitar rig. Maybe speak to that in terms of like the emulation of classicness.
Well, I don't want to give away all my secrets here, Anthony, but
It's a high watts.
I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
Well, that is the high watts, yes. But they have Neve transformers in them, believe it or not. That was he originally hand wired those anyway. This amp wall, okay, their heads, they connect to cabs in the live floor, and then there's obviously a slew of microphones you can throw onto them, and then endless channels on the console to run them through, and whatever to get the sound that you want with room mics and everything. That sounds good, but so does this universal audio aux box, which is one cable, and you're ready to go. So like, as many times as I'm like encouraging people to mic up stuff off the floor like that and put cabs up with mics and the preamps, a lot of the time we'll end up using this, and like the result is at the very least comparable, if not possibly better, because you can control every aspect of it. So something like this is offloading the head, so you basically could put the head into this cab emulator, and it will load it down as if it's playing through an actual speaker, and then in the box of this universal audio thing, it will profile different cabs and different microphones in different rooms. And by God, it sounds, I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, it's a shame though to have a room where you can do literally what that box emulates and then choose not to, which I guess is cool, but at the same time, it does kind of take away the need for a large format studio like this. And again, if you're playing off the floor and you need isolation and visuals, sight lines, and the proper environment to record a live band, I mean, that's one thing. But like, if you were just doing guitars, you actually don't need that room anymore with the mics and everything. And again, there's a realness to it, and the dream of wanting to stand in front of 6 guitar amps at the same time and feel them, vibrating the guitar and feeding back and feeling cool. Like that is obviously the glorification of what we do and why we got into it in the first place. But for efficiency, I mean, you really can't beat it. I think if I recorded 5 guitars for a session, I would do 4 of them through that thing and 1 of them off the floor, just to get that little bit of realism. That you can't even tell at that point which one is which, and it just kind of creates this tapestry. So speaking to being DAW as the whole thing, I think you can emulate all of these pieces, even down to the hardware of the head. Like there's Universal Audio has I forget what the studio is called. It's like a Paradise Guitar Studio or something like that, and it does everything. It emulates the whole shebang. And then like Neural DSP's got crazy guitar plugins, and that's just for the guitar world.
Yeah.
So like, I really do think it's being completely taken over by that. And if people are not hanging on to the purist vibe and wanting to have it genuinely be real and actually pushing air, then I don't think that this kind of stuff is going to be as common as it used to be. What do you guys think?
Let me, Michael.
You're not wrong, Ross. But you can also go and buy expensive handmade shoes.
Right.
You don't have to buy them from Amazon. And the truth of the matter is, the horrifying truth may actually be that lovingly handcrafted, authentically, analog, or somebody actually hit something, strummed something, otherwise angrily made air vibrate, and then someone like you or any of us captured it sensibly and intelligently and carefully with a microphone, and that might become a bespoke operation in the future. Like that might be a luxury good,
right?
Some time way off in the future. And I think most of us are kind of satisfied with that, in the sense that we recognize that you're never going to outperform a passionate amateur who's rich in time and poor in money, because that bedroom producer can agonize over every note, and have every chord in equal temperament or just temperament rather. Like, I mean, he or she can do miracles that the pro just can't afford the time. Nobody's going to pay you or I to do what that amateur can do over thousands of hours in their bedroom, and then at the last moment bring it to one of us for a little bit of spit and polish. And I think we recognize that, at least in the music world, if not the broader media world, that's very likely the way things are going to be until we entirely get taken over by AI slop, I suppose.
Well, let's put a pin in that one. We'll come back to So one of the comments I've heard is it doesn't have that Neve sound, but in reality, like that Neve sound is a Neve in a room that could afford to have a room. And like Ross, I'm looking at your SSL there, and it's like I want that SSL sound, but that SSL sound isn't just that SSL sound. It's the people in the room experiencing the hospitality that is Ross. Does the DAW take away from that? Does the DAW, what does the DAW do to that kind of client experience?
I think that's the curated experience that I was sort of talking about earlier, where you're trying to, the DAW sort of lives in the corner and it does its thing, but the creative outlook with the client, like I've always seen the producers are like the vehicle that helps to take their vision out into the real world, right? So if you're there and that's the vision with the artist, and you're in this world, what they're hearing out of the speakers and watching the speakers move, that should just be all that we're vibing on. And then the DAW is just the tool that gets you there. So like, to me, if I pull up on the speakers and they don't watching what I'm doing, if they don't know that I'm using these amps and this thing, and they don't know if I'm using John Mayer's new archetype from Neural DSP, or they don't know if I've got the amp in the room, or they don't know if the talkback's on, if they like what they hear, then I think the curation of the vibe is still being preserved. And then I think that's okay. I think it's totally cool if you've gotten there and the client is still like is stoked on it. But if they're one of those gear snobs who's like, so you be just putting me into your Apollo and that's my guitar sound, why don't we using all this stuff? Yeah. Then you've got a different beast on your hands, right? But I think with the experience, as long as you can curate what the client wants and expects from you, I think that's okay.
That's good. Chris, what about time thieves? Like you talked about that FOMO of plugins and the DAW where sit in front of a computer all day. I think computers are out to kill us. Poor posture, bad user interface, all of the above. Like, what is the biggest time thief for you in your workflow in what you're trying to accomplish when you're mixing?
The phone.
The phone.
Yeah. I would say, yeah. So that's my biggest advice. Turn that phone off. Put it in airplane mode, at least get the speaker off, because we're like with that phone, man, that we get distracted with social media, like notifications and all that stuff. So yeah, for me, when I mix or when I work, I turn my phone not off, but it's silent mode basically. And I just check my messages and whatever I need to check at lunchtime or after I'm done doing what I do. Because you can easily listen. You get someone sending you, a friend of yours sending you a TikTok video, and then next thing you know, you've been there for an hour, just scrolling. And somehow TikTok knows exactly what you want to watch.
I gotcha.
Yeah, so that's my big thing.
Okay, so Jason, we talked about unplugging. Do you? I've been to a lot of studios that don't have the internet on their DAWs and internet. Like, do you air gap your systems, or do you do anything to ensure reliability when it comes to unplugging them? No.
Not really, because I'm also pretty clean with my systems, so I'm not worried about stuff. And yeah, if I had come across a problem where that was the problem, then that would have solved it. But no, generally, I'm pretty good with unplugging. But I think, it's to a degree. We're trying to do that. We're trying to connect with the music coming out, and then we also want to sequester ourselves to have no outside influence on that. But sometimes that TikTok would be the thing you needed. I don't know. It's weird. I think still it's a good idea to have the damn phone off for sure, 100%. But with my computer systems, no, I'm not really worried about it that way. With the ones you're touring with, obviously, yeah, turn the internet off because you don't want any of that stuff coming up when you're playing a show or doing something. But I think back in the day, yeah, I was a complete, like, especially if we're talking I was on a PC, different conversation probably. Yeah, on a Mac, I'd be like, yeah, I can have the internet there. It's fine. Got to update some stuff every once in a while. That's pretty much all we're doing, right? Like, and emails.
Michael, in a full blown enterprise, like you would have an NLE that does your playout, you'd have Pro Tools that does your Pro Tools, and then you would have like an office machine that does. Like, was that kind of a standard operating procedure in your enterprise?
In post production, then once you move into a production audio control room, a live room, well, now you've got multiples of other computer systems, as you well know. Yeah, file management is probably the number one writ large, at least in a big operation. It was probably the number one time suck for people. Once we stopped having to wait to render things, once we stopped having to wait to transfer files or for our hard drives to be carted from one building to another, old scuzzy 9 gig hard drives that were the size of lunch boxes, and you needed a stack of them to get the media composer to fire up. And it took a finite amount of time for the guy to get them across the parking lot in the cart and turn off the computer, plug in the SCSI chain. So once all of that stuff was gone and everyone had instant access to everything, now it's file management. Now it's what's your data hygiene like? What does your system look like? How good are you at updating the database with, here's an updated version of the sequence, or here's a new picture change that just came in. Where am I filing that EDL? Where am I, all that stuff.
I totally get that. I'm sure we've all seen final mix, final, V2, final. Yeah, I'm sure we're all guilty of maybe doing that sometimes, myself included. So let's talk about file management. How much of your time is actually dealing with, client files? I'm sure Jason, like your 90% of your tasks are dealing with files. Like Chris, you're dealing with mixes that come in. Ross, you're kind of creating the mixes as you go. Like, do you have any file handling wisdom that you want to share with the group? Yeah, go Ross. You got your mic open.
I was just waiting to see because I'm sure there's more wisdom than I have. I was hoping someone more wise would have the
final.
Yeah, perfect. I've seen people get caught in the corruption or the backup wars, and they really that really screws them up. So to me, I've got an internal drive that I work on, an external drive that automatically backs up at the end of every day. So to me, it's like I've got in the Mac file system, I've got the client, and then inside I have the song, and then inside the song, every version of the Pro Tools session that might be there, the tracking one, the Melodyne session, the drum sampling, whatever. And then all of that is immediately, as soon as the computer's ready to be shut down, it clones to the backup drive. And then every day I go home and I can go to sleep because I feel like I'd be so worried about that losing the file, right? But I've heard some horror stories. I've seen people lose drives just by accidentally knocking off their table, and then the client's work. I mean, that's you have to restore that. That's your responsibility, right? So that's the biggest thing for me, is just making sure it's backed up. And I think that I use Carbon Copy Cloner. That's what does the backup, and that just saves me endless worrying, and because I'm a worrier. So I'll go home and I'll be like, I turn the studio off, so I need to make sure that I can sleep at night knowing that those files are preserved. And that's really been the only thing that's kind of kept me surviving, I think, is not losing that work.
I totally know. Chris, you got your mic open. Please, add to that.
I lost some work at some time, and man, that was a nightmare. You get into the studio and I start up the computer and the hard drive wasn't there at all. That was years ago. And I was with my co-producer and was like, okay, where the heck is that drive? And rebooted the computer, removed the drive, connected again, and I ended up going to the computer store for them to tell me that, yeah, this drive is dead, so just throw it out. It's like, whoa. The last time I did a backup was 3 weeks ago. I was in the middle of producing 2 albums, forget it. So I had to go to a data recovery place in Montreal, and it cost me like $2,000 to get everything back. But at least they gave me a free hard drive. So, but so I was so happy to pay that amount of money. I'm telling you this.
I get it. Yeah,
but you want to avoid this. So now I have my own NAS, Synology NAS, and I also have backups on the cloud with Backblaze.
Okay.
So I have like everything is backed up as it goes. So
No, that's good. Jason, I'm sure you have a theory, and you could write a book on data management and proper management. Maybe give us some of the words of wisdom of being a tour playback operator. What can you share?
Make sure there's 5 copies of whatever you copied. And
Five.
someone,
You're up to
yeah,
five.
just like
Excellent.
whatever. Like, you know what I mean? That's it. Like, you know, if you're, okay, from the perspective of like a playback operator, you are the copy, but there has to be more than, if you don't make the plane, the show's over. So someone, you have to have the buddy system with a copy somewhere, right? But I personally am not so good at doing that stuff for myself because I guess it really hasn't happened to me yet. I don't know.
Oh, now
But
it's gone.
no, I literally just Googled carbon clone thing.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
gotta find some wood and knock on there.
no, we're good. No, I've had it happen, and I've back up, but I don't back up as diligently. But I'm also like, it's weird. I work in seasons, and I make sure whoever I'm working with knows they got their backs up, and that's it. And I don't have to worry about it because I may come and work with them for like a month or 2 years or
Right.
something, right? My long-standing clients, they trust me to know I've got all their stuff, and I've got all the hard drives going back 20 years with Nelly or Frank and all these guys. So it's like, you know, it's weird. Sometimes data comes at you fast and hard. Like I was doing Canada's Got Talent for the last 4 or 5 years, and you know, hundreds of cues, hundreds of, like, I don't have to back any of that stuff up. It's never coming back. It's gone. Like it's done. Like no one's ever gonna ask me for a contestant who had the clown sound or something. You know what I mean? So some of that stuff's like, but why am I keeping it still? Like, is it like I have it?
But I know
You
you have a
know?
copy of it. You do have a copy.
Yeah, right. Like yeah.
Um,
So
Michael, like coming from an enterprise, like that's a little bit different thing when you have enterprise grade, backups. Synology, Chris, like not to knock at Synology, but like that's a cute data storage in the world of like enterprise grade servers and stuff. Michael, you must have like a totally different perspective on some of this stuff. Though you do a lot of recording and freelancing stuff, maybe can you speak from the enterprise grade side of things?
Yeah, that's a big part of that file management time suck. A lot of that is the archival process, because your ability to find something later is only as good as the amount of care someone used to put it into the archive.
Hmm.
So this is, of course, one of the great downsides when you have, I mean, when I was last in operational management at Bell Media, I had, 20 staff audio guys and 50 video editors under me, 35 video suites and a dozen audio rooms. And that was a 24/7 operation. They're generating a ton of content. It's one thing to make sure everyone knows how to find something tomorrow when they come in for their shift. It's quite another thing to say that a producer is going to walk into an edit suite tomorrow and say, hey, about 8 months ago, I cut a thing with Frank,
Right.
and I want to take something out of the top of the second segment of that. Can you find it for me? Okay, here we go. Now he knows that it's all there. He knows that it's a single web page away from me technically being able to find it.
Right.
And he knows that once I've found it and I've clicked on a button that commands a tape robot somewhere to respin a tar and bring, a 2 gig fragment back from some petabytes big tape archive and drop it on the NAS and send me an email while it's at it to tell me that it's done it. That's dependent on me knowing that it wasn't actually 8 months ago. It was 3.5 years ago.
Right.
He didn't cut it with Frank. He cut it with Mary. And it wasn't even for the right sport that he told me that it was from. But if I can find it, it's his, and he knows this. But that time suck, the last thing anybody wants at the end of a long day or at the end of a long week is to sit there and start putting information into a database or to properly be naming things. And yet we all know what happens when that doesn't happen.
So, Michael, once you're into the enterprise grade of things, you stop dealing with files and you start dealing with metadata. Could you maybe speak to the importance
Yes.
of metadata and data about data, metadata? You know, what kind of lessons can you take from the large scale and bring them down to the average DAW user?
Well, I hope that if we have a panel like this again in a couple of years, the answer is a little bit different and a little bit more, sort of topical. Because I mean, look at how the notion of an AAF has sort of transformed the audio industry. What started out as this bizarre, weird open media framework thing, which only one of those words was correct, the media. It was neither open nor much of a framework. But and then AAF came along, and now at least for most of the DAWs out there, there is a workflow, either direct or via maybe one hop, that you can nominally get typically fairly good dynamic content exchange between software packages or platforms. We still don't really have that nailed down, most especially now with immersive and all the rest of this, notwithstanding how great ADM is and how it's sort of revolutionizing, people otherwise getting siloed into proprietary ecosystems. But I think the best thing I could say quickly about metadata, Anthony, is that there's more and more and more and more of it coming. And I think the number one thing I'm hoping to get out of AI in the future is a helping hand at managing it, because I don't think the human factor is going to change. You're going to be no less interested, no more interested in filling out database forms at the end of a long mix day,
Right.
In the future than you are now. But I truly hope that truly intelligent assistance will mean I don't need to worry about the AI mixing the song for me. That's not the business I'm going to be in. But I really desperately hope that that AI agent can be trusted to be, Johnny on the spot when it comes to all of those tasks, those sort of mechanical procedural tasks that require some intelligence, quote unquote, but don't necessarily require my skills. So, hey, go be the best artificial assistant you can and help me manage this increasing torrent of metadata, without which it's really hard for me to guarantee consistent results over time.
Yeah, the Dream A2, if you will, and
precisely
the Dream Studio Assistant. I totally get that. Ross, in your studio, are you one person show, or you got a team of folks working with you, or how do people around you help you focus on your craft in your mix rooms?
So the studio is a 2 control room, shared floor kind of scenario. So I've got people in the B room that rent out the B room, and there's 4 or 5 clients in there that basically are running their show from there, and they're independent. They're all in Pro Tools, but they're all sort of independent. They do their thing. We share the floor when it's necessary. And then on my end, I've got 2 assistants right now. One, the sort of main assistant, and then another who just started as an intern. And the 2 of them, they're both fluent in Pro Tools. They were my students at Harris. And the idea, the way I try to run it, it's not always like this, but the way I try to run it is when I'm doing live tracking sessions, they're there being the Pro Tools ops so that I can stay living in the vibe world with the client. And so they're sort of working off my templates and they're doing their thing. But then in the editing world, or when I'm about to prep a mix, they're on their independent Pro Tools systems, and this is why the Pro Tools world is so important to me here, is that we're able to sort of farm out and work off of similar or the same sessions, and then interchange that data back and forth with session import data features, and be able to kind of you take the drum sampling, you take the drum editing, you take the keyboard editing, the whatever, and so that allows all of those pieces to happen independently. The stuff that I need to work on and sort of manage directly, like anything pertaining to vocal tuning or decisions like that, I kind of handle that, and then I farm out the things that need to be done. We all come together and review it in one master session, and then that becomes the mix project that we put across the console. And in that workflow there, I don't know that would work as easily in other DAWs, just with the way that I've kind of got it set up, but like I said, I've never really been in them, so it would be, be interesting to see how someone else would run the same system. But for me, it's so integral that we're all in Pro Tools, and also all in Mac. I've had a few assistants over the years where they were on Pro Tools, but they were in PC. And like by the time I could have edited the project, it actually took me that amount of time to put it on a Google Drive, send them the link, they downloaded it, then they had to convert it somehow and open it, right? By that amount of time was crazy. So really having it all in the DAW and then the assistants sort of knowing their lane with that has really helped streamline what I do.
Chris, have you ever explored any cloud-based solutions? Like, I know you deal primarily as a remote mixer. You're a non-Pro Tools user. How do you get session data and that type of information into your workflow?
I just share a link, an upload link on pCloud. That's it. So they can send me the files. And once I'm done mixing or we need to do revisions and stuff, I use it's a platform called I forgot the name. It's a website basically. So you just like upload the song, the mix, and then clients, they can comment straight on the mix itself, even with little tags and stuff at the specific location, and leave their notes, which is very, very useful. And if I want to do live revisions, I go with Session. Is it Session? Let me check here. Yeah, Session Wire.
Okay.
Canadian company from Edmonton, actually. So
is the remote work an important workflow in your DAW workflow nowadays? Like you say, session
meaning,
with having people comment remotely or contribute remotely.
Yes, yeah, I would say mainly with the web-based platform more than Session Wire. Session Wire is cool if I need to do a live session. It doesn't happen often that clients wants to go live, and it's mainly like if it happens, it's going to be like at the right end, maybe at mix 35, whatever, the last revisions, which is cool because it's kind of a Zoom type of platform. And you can share your Cubase or Pro Tools session. And Session Wire also has a driver, basically, an audio driver as a plugin. So this is how you can share the high quality audio through the system and do live touch-ups with the client. And the client already will have a nice high quality feed to listen to right away. So that's a nice system. But I would say I do most of the mix revisions just on the web-based platform with notes, written notes.
Very cool, very cool. I'm just going to take this time to tell the people who are still tuned in online if they want to post a comment in the YouTube YubTub. I don't know how to pronounce it. You're able to comment, put a question, and we'll have it forwarded to the panel here. We are indeed live. It is actually January 27th. So what's next for the DAW? Chris, do you I'm sure Ross and Jason, you'll get this question, but are your clients asking you for immersive mixes now? Are you starting to see, an uptake in the need for immersive audio in your workflows?
So far, no. Someone once asked me if I do Atmos mixes, but that's it. But no, I don't get a lot but I don't deal a lot with labels, so that could be a thing too.
Okay, that's a good point. The label work is, and they want it because they want to be able to, they want to remodel the catalog, remix the catalog, be able to resell it, and call attention to new work. But like a band, I find I'm spending more time convincing them why they need it, right? Which is such a weird thing because I put an Atmos system in here, a basic one, but I did put an Atmos system in here, and I'm spending more time convincing bands that they need it, and going, you guys got to check this out. And obviously when you hear it in the room and you listen to it in a properly calibrated system, I mean it is infinitely better than stereo in that you were literally surrounded by audio. I mean, how much cooler can it get if you've done the mix right? It's awesome, but to then go, okay, well, yeah, you can't play it back in your car because even if you have an Atmos system, you can't play it on Bluetooth. You have to log in on the internet on your thing. And it's like there's so many reasons why it's not as catch-onable as I think they originally thought. Although the scalability is quite cool, no one's really coming in and going, "I love this Atmos mix, so can you please, can we make that happen, and can we shoot this towards it?" I see more people going, "I want to win the Atmos award for whatever, like whether it's a Juno or whatever." They're like, "I want to win, so like, can we do that?" Like they're not doing it because they want to hear it and experience it like that. They're doing it because someone told them to. You know what I mean?
Like for me, it comes back to the listener, the person listening to the music. And I remember when we went from CDs to MP3s with Steve Jobs, showing out the iPod. You can store like 100 songs in that box. So it went through like lesser quality audio format, which was like the cheap MP3 version, because of convenience.
Yeah.
And this is what we're not getting with Atmos in immersive music, especially, for theaters and for movies, that's a different story. But for music, I don't think it's that convenient for the listener at this point in time, anyways. I know that the industry is pushing it, but like 2025, we heard a lot about Atmos in 2024. But last year, I think Atmos got stolen by AI. AI stole the show.
My theory is that, and again, maybe everybody's going to yell at me about this, but like my theory was that because Apple wasn't as high up in the market share in terms of DSPs, it's like, well, if someone's going to listen to a mix in Apple in Atmos, it's going to sound way better, and then when they go listen to the Spotify one, it won't sound as good, so therefore they'll go, well, I want to buy Apple. I mean, that makes sense in theory, but I think that's why they really flipped the script and try to push that agenda. Plus, it's a really good reason for companies like Neve and whatever to be like, well, why our Genesis that's the Atmos one now? Like, it's a great way to put more gear out,
For sure. But Spotify didn't jump in Atmos yet.
No, that's what I mean. Spotify is sitting in stereo and being like, cool, I'm the leader of the market. But, Apple's going, well, we sound better, so you should use us,
Michael, chomping at the bit here. Go.
Yeah, I am. I have to. Because I'm the multi-channel evangelist. Look, a television or dramatic producer, if they have their druthers and an unlimited budget, will still shoot on film, despite the fact that they're not going to print the thing and deliver cans of celluloid to local theaters. But they'll do so out of some sense that that's the best capture medium, and at least he can figure it out later. For the same reason that as a broadcaster, I never, ever, ever needed anything better than 48K 24-bit to push out the door. But that doesn't mean I didn't track at 96 every opportunity I got, because it was not going to happen again. So in a world where, Ross, you guys like you are getting legitimately, and for good reason, a lot of work remixing back catalog stuff for labels into Atmos, I ask everyone the following question. How comfortable are you with someone else remixing your mix into a new format at some point in the future? Because we thought it wasn't important to do now, so we just stuck with stereo. If that record catches fire, or if that artist ends up having a long career, or if the label, somebody else might do something. Just because you mix it in multi-channel doesn't mean you must deliver it today. And this has been true, by the way, for a quarter century. This was true of 5.1. I've mixed and produced, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 albums over the last similar number of years, just as side projects for mates. I've never delivered one in anything more than stereo. They've all gone through mastering, and they've ended up on shiny silver discs. But every one of them was both tracked and mixed in multi-channel. Mm-hmm. Firstly. And so what the artist finally took delivery of was legitimately a down mix of a greater than parent mix, but born out of the notion that any future use of this thing may require a greater than stereo presentation. And why would I trust someone else to do it? And I can't necessarily trust that I'm either going to be around or the artist will think to come and bring the work back to me. So even being cynical about object-based audio or high order surround or surround plus height or immersive, however you want to call it, and whatever flavor we're thinking about, I think there is still an arguable point about the future proofing of content, especially when it's not ours, when it's our clients.
Do you see any part of it like being like kind of like a relay race? Like, I kind of like the idea of like, hey, I did the best stereo mix I could. Okay, now you do the Atmos. You know, like if someone down.
That's
You know
fine,
what I mean?
but do it now. Do it while it's
I'd say
fresh.
Own it.
And
Right.
in fact, don't. I mean, this is my little baby soapbox, and it's literally it's going to be 15 words. A properly done multi-channel mix will result in a 2 mix, which is at least as good as a stereo mix that you undertook originally as a 2-channel construction, and very often much more adventurous than anything you would ever have undertaken in 2-channel stereo, as a direct result of, and that's now when we don't have to worry about phase and all that other crap that we used to have to deal with when 5.1 mixes folded down to stereo. Now you're just talking about re-rendering in 2-channel. And there's nothing to show. If I have an LORO stereo render come out of Dolby or MPEG-H, it is indistinguishable from a native 2-channel construction. And there's no evidence, certainly no deleterious evidence. There's no anti-phase. There's no weirdness in the mix. And yet it's merely a 2-channel presentation of what was a higher order presentation originally. So it may be a relay race, but it's only a relay race if you're delivering channel-based content. If you're delivering object-based content, well, then by definition, it's not a relay race. Because as the renderers improve, when I listen to Dolby Atmos mixes tonight that I mixed 5 years ago, they sound better today because the renderer has improved in 5 years. And the granularity of the reproduction, which is happening in real time every time I press play, is improving over time.
That's a great
we've never had that in audio before.
I love that. That's a great point. That's really good.
I'll ask Jason this. You know, Jason, you deal a lot with the live presentations, and I'm sure you've always played back stems. And like, is there like a noticeable need in the concert experience for the whiz bang quadraphonic, type of?
I've done the whiz bang quadraphonic for a couple different artists, and the first was Childish Gambino. We did a dome interactive concert in a dome with Unreal Engine doing visuals and everything tied to objects that were floating around and MIDI controlled things, everything sort of interactive. And the next one was a 7.1 surround tour we did with Frank Ocean, and we toured with towers of sound that we would place at every festival and create a field. But only 30,000 people of the 100,000 people were inside that little circle. And where you were in the circle depended on what your mix was. And that's totally different from these experiences that are delivered for you as the pinpoint right here, everything's tuned for you, in that time-aligned kind of way. So it's been interesting to see it try to be implemented. And I know with the Frank thing, we canceled 4 out of 8 tour dates. And that's like $2 million a show, right? To just not do it because we didn't get it right. And the first time around, the mixes were very like trippy dippy, and the weight of objects were in different spots, and it wasn't like what you expected at a concert with things front weighted and some stuff flying around here and there, but not, So we went too far with it, and it was disorienting and nauseating at times, which is super weird, right? Like. And the same stuff with the visuals when we did this Gambino thing. Like, you could affect, like, we were doing a group VR experience, same sort of immersive concept, but like, if you mess up where the horizon is for like a second, everyone's like, yeah, and it can totally like affect you. So having the tools, doing them right. Feist, another artist I consulted with for a while, was doing an Atmos tour, and they had all this playback stuff. They never hit play once on their Ableton system. It was just facilitating signal flow, right? So it's interesting, like, to see how it can be used properly. I don't think, budget-wise, there's any space for anyone other than a Taylor Swift or someone to really like implement it at that level yet, and that's kind of sad. I mean, even the Frank stuff, I was touring with 2 Symphony IOs running like 30 outputs, and like that's not a typical playback system for band A, B, or C, right? So I wish we got there. My hope with the beauty of this whole Atmos stuff coming online is amazing, but it's still not at I guess more of a commercial touring spot yet. Although, why not? Got a bunch of speakers, put them there. Do that. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily, other than like the distribution system, any crazier tech, right? So yeah.
That's very cool. It's very cool. Well, we're kind of getting to the end of our night here, and I've got some beautiful questions that people have started to post. If any, yeah, Ross, please have some chocolate milk, please. I'm sorry if it goes through your nose when you laugh.
I do chocolate milk reviews if anyone's paying attention on Instagram.
It's very good. Chocolate milk reviews. And okay, so what's the best chocolate milk in Ontario? Is it Kawartha Dairy?
I haven't done Canada yet. I've only done most of Europe. So we were on tour, so follow and you'll see.
So one of the comments I got is Native Instruments announcing insolvency. Way to go, guys. We cracked them down to nothing. Are users so used to just the crack and to get it for free that they don't see the value in certain things? Or why are software companies starting to call it quits nowadays? It's a hard thing. Chris,
Can I jump on this real fast?
Please, yeah.
Yeah, I also work in the music sales industry, and watching Native Instruments do their thing has been pretty transparent. You can see the direction that some of their choices have gone. The two things that I think that kind of killed their stride was focusing on the big bundle deliverable, right? Like marketing like the $1,000 thing that's got it all. Don't worry, it's all in there. Go fine, go take it. And then the work that they've done with the hardware they've got, and it's very weird seeing like a machine product that this doesn't work anymore because it's not supported. But there's a 909 from the 1980s that's still working, and
Right.
and that I can't reconcile with that, and the way the gatekeeping of software has. I think that's you see there was a bit pushback with the I guess the when Pro Tools went all licensee
Right.
worth like a
Same
month.
with Waves.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
were revolutions.
But you piss off keyboard players, they're not as jacked into this as Pro Tools user who has just like they're locked in, right?
That's
So
right. You're committed. Michael, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I don't think we have a new normal yet for the business model. Lots has been said about the business model of the music business and the various media businesses, and broadcasting is dead. Well, the software business that underpins us isn't exactly firing on all cylinders either. Once upon a time, Pro Tools shipped as a stack of 3.5-inch floppy disks.
Right.
There was still hard cost associated with those yearly software updates. But as we've gone to zero marginal cost for the replication and distribution of software, and even the licensing piece, you don't need a physical iLock anymore, blah, 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 blah. All of these costs have been taken out of the exchange. And yet, even with licensing, rapacious capitalism needs to sort itself out. No one here, and none of our listeners here would wish for a very talented software developer who's writing the next great piece of audio software to not be properly compensated. Nobody's asking for that. In fact, we want them to be properly rewarded. But they're as important as we are. Without the tools, we can't practice our craft. Mm-hmm. And yet, just sort of like with professional athletes, there is an asymmetrical economy. And so, I question whether or not a long established, slow updating software is worth the sometimes exorbitant costs that are being charged on a running basis. Now, capitalism says charge what the market will bear, and Native Instruments clearly found how much the market would bear over the last number of years. But, are we not with Native Instruments, but imagine if Avid has circled the drain. Avid's gone through any number of corporate changes, but is Avid, for instance, a company that, as regards the media business, is too big to fail? Like, what happens when Native Instruments closes doors? Nobody comes in and buys the IP. And now, thousands and thousands and thousands of working professionals who have a dependency on NI hardware and software are now beat. I think it should give us all pause.
Yeah, 'cause that includes Isotope and Brainworks.
Yeah.
They're subsidiaries of Native Instruments, or
Yeah.
same kind of thing.
Same corporate owner.
Yeah, they got bought like a couple of years ago.
So way to bring down
and
way
the
to bring it
isotope
down.
and the isotope one is not nothing.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
isotope thing is not nothing. Maybe
Big.
people just
That's
got good at building beautiful sounding rooms, and we don't need noise reduction anymore, Michael.
There you go. That's the story.
I think that's the solution. We're looking at. We talked a little bit about object-based editing and DAWs. Like, is there anybody really doing it well natively, or is this everything a bolt-on when it comes to object-based editing and DAWs?
I think you need
Say more words about that. What do you mean by natively?
Well, like Pro Tools has left and right. It also has center and it has back, but it does not have up. Right, natively, I look at Ross's console there. It's got a left, right, and it's got 3 auxiliaries.
No, Pro Tools has a vertical summing bus. If you create it in any of these DAWs now, if you create a 7.1.2 bus, you have a vertical summing matrix.
Okay,
you can legitimately pan smoothly from ear plane to canopy.
That's why I ask. Hey, don't get upset. I'm just asking.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm ignorant when it comes to the Pro Tools, but is that the only one on the market that is really natively? No. What other DAWs?
No,
like Pyramix?
no.
Somebody asked about thoughts on Pyramix.
Pyramix is the leader in the clubhouse for sure for format compatibility.
Why do you?
Because it can natively create channel based mixes, meaning it has a summing pan matrix that will accommodate formats up to NHK's 22.2. Oh, in fact, maybe it goes all the way to 30.2 now. The point is, it has the biggest traditional channel based panner of any console, real or virtual, that I know of.
But I think what if I may
Please
jump in, I think what I think we're wondering about is because so Pro Tools recently introduced Sony 360. There's another one that they put out. I'm blanking on the name of it right now. But there's another one that they put in that's sort of like an overall mixing compatibility thing with Dolby and with 360. And what that now lets you do within the back end, you can switch the renderers. So you'll get 360, and then it'll switch your mix so that it then becomes compatible to Atmos, all within the rendering of the back end of the I/O. So now Pro Tools natively, right, even though it's using their renderers, it's natively allowing you to switch between them. Whereas I believe with other DAWs, you're still forced to go out into an external renderer, like into Atmos, the Dolby Atmos renderer, or into the 360 renderer from outside of that DAW. I think that's what we're talking about. Am I wrong?
I think so. Ableton, is it doing 5.1 and up? Does it do up? Does it have the concept of up?
Well, not necessarily natively, but they've got Max for Live tools that have been exploring some of this, and there's one product called Envelop, which is a San Francisco-based company that's been building a software-hardware combination for installation stuff. But no, I've messed around with some of there's some free Dolby Atmos tools that have been implemented. But no, I'm waiting to see if they do something. I mean, again, they've been really hot in the installation world. A lot of art kids doing their stuff with Ableton and Max for Live and Max MSP. But yeah, it's still kind of the weird thing on the block for us, unfortunately. Yeah.
Chris, have you played with any plugins? Have you seen any of that stuff that's happening?
Yeah, with Cubase, yeah, there's an internal renderer plugin for Atmos. So I did a quick video when it came out on Cubase 14. I do not mix in Atmos, so it was just like a basic explanation video. I know that Nuendo also. I think it's even more established on Nuendo than Cubase, but yeah.
You know, there are, we've talked about several DAWs, but we've not touched on Pyramix, and we've not touched on Sequoia and Samplitude, and I heard Nuendo for the first time. It's kind of like a bingo. We should have had bingo cards and shots. Every time somebody says Pro Tools, you got to take a drink. I would be wasted. The, but a bingo card, like, why aren't you a Nuendo user and you're a Cubase user, Chris? And then I'll come back to Ross, and it's like, why aren't you a Pyramix user, Ross? Chris, why don't you use Nuendo?
Oh, because I always use Cubase, and Cubase is like does everything that Nuendo does, to the exception of post-production stuff. So there's more features in Nuendo, but they're pretty much the same, aside from this.
Ross, why don't you use Pyramix? Why don't you have a Sequoia rig running your stuff? And why aren't you recording DSD?
I'm currently Googling what Pyramix is. If anyone's wondering why I'm looking at it, what is, I don't even know what that is.
This is good. This is good. Well, and does it come down to marketing and brand awareness? I'm a huge Reaper user. I've paid for Reaper several times. I'm running Reaper on Linux and
Wow.
and Windows and all this stuff. Like, Jason, what do some of your students come in, and are they Reaper students? Are we part of a tribe of software users?
I think it's a really cool community, but Reaper's the weird one on the block, although it's one of the most powerful things I've seen in terms of just something about Reaper's going to do it, for you. I've had lots of solutions. But yeah, no. A lot of my students are Fruity Loop, FL Studio.
Yeah, that's another one we have. It's on my list. Yeah, yeah.
Drink, shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting seeing their brains. For me, I kind of like joke, and I teach at Harris, and I say I'm the defense against the dark arts teacher if this was the Harry Potter situation, right? Like, yeah, like I'm no matter what you guys are going to do with your programs, I'm the one you're going to make money with on stage.
Cool. I dig that.
Yeah, right? We fight about that a lot because my students they come from Jason's group, and then my students go to Jason's group, and so like he's the Ableton guy, I'm the Pro Tools guy, and so we have this yin and yang. We've never even met before tonight. We have this yin and yang.
That's amazing.
What about Luna? Have you guys thought about Luna at all?
What the heck is
Never
Luna?
tried.
See, I'm Googling Pyramix. You guys are Googling Luna.
Is that the Mackie one? No, that's Universal Audio.
It's Universal Audio's one, yeah. And they were pushing it pretty hard for a while. Because
that's hardware dependent software or hardware influenced software. That is augmented by the Universal Audio software, right? If you have one of their software accelerators, very much like Pro Tools and their HD stuff, like, are we going to go back to that model of this hardware outperforms this because the software works with it? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think you can still run it standalone, which is what I think is they're trying to do their competing thing where they're going, well, it's free because you own an Apollo, but I think that their whole thing was they were trying to deal with analog summing as though, not only were you a tape machine as a recorder, but you've got this console where the whole point was you can run emulations on the console. You can kind of like, it's an Eve now it's an API, now it's an SSL, and you can run the mixer engine of the software as though it was an actual analog console, like you were summing through something like this, right? And I don't think it really caught. I remember originally when it was out, I remember they did a video with Dave Cobb down in Nashville, and he was he was running a mix through it, and like a lot of stuff wasn't working, like live on their demo thing, and they were kind of going through it like, well, this will work later, and it was quite funny to to watch, but I don't use it. I'm just wondering.
I totally get it. I'm of the opinion that well, summing amps. We could do a whole night on summing amps and stuff like that. Like it's you got Marshall amps there, and you got Fender, and you got all this. It's how it distorts is musically. There's no such beautiful. Nobody has ever once said that the way that Pro Tools distorts is musical. So I do think that stuff like the Luna and that kind of emulation side of things is like a totally different world.
Well, Pro Tools has heat, right? Have you seen that that sort of back end thing in Pro Tools? It was done by Dave Hill, the Crane Song guy.
Yeah.
Or Phoenix.
Hardware designers. Yeah.
Yeah, and he put this. So it's actually in the back end of Pro Tools. So if you're running heat, you can actually run a console emulation across basically the top of your insert slot. So clip into the channel, and then you can actually run this heat thing on it, and it's sort of got global settings. So it's like you can go tape distortion or tube distortion, and then you can go bright or dark, and it does cool things, whether it's for everything, but you can create analogness with it.
Yeah, my favorite summing amp is a Boss DS1. It's a great summing amp. You just run it just a little right before it clips. So when it comes to plugins, we talked. Somebody's asking about the plugin alliance on your bingo card. We didn't mention Logic Pro that often. That's another one. Harrison Console. Man, the bingo is adding up here. When you have you mentioned something about mixes coming in, and you turn it into Pro Tools, and it just works if you have the plugins. How has renting plugins actually changed your workflow, Ross? Or Chris, have you ever rented a plugin? We'll go to Ross first, and then we'll go to Chris there.
I have only in that the other. It's actually funny. It just happened the other day. I had a guy. He did a whole record down in Joshua Tree, and then they mixed it and whatever. And he came back to Toronto, and he had 2 or 3 things he wanted to change, and he came to me, and instead of kind of like just taking the stems that they printed and going again, he wanted me to recall the session directly, and I was like, I didn't feel great about it, because it's not like, to me it's sort of like you're opening up someone else's thing. So I wanted to chat with them first. So we talked to the producer and mixer, and he was like, yeah, whatever, just go ahead, open up, here's what I use. And then in order to get my system to open the things, I had to go in and either rent or demo plugins for this. So Pro Tools will spit out a list of everything you don't have.
Yeah.
And then using the Avid link, you can actually get links directly to it and purchase those things. So it was kind of easy, except for one of the annoying ones that I won't mention the name of the plugin manufacturer, but for the most part, it's pretty easy, especially if you're talking about something like Plugin Alliance or I forget the other one, but there's some where you can rent them right on the spot, and you rent it from your DAW. You can actually rent it to their portal page through the plugin.
Yeah, Jason, Chris, have you ever rented a plugin?
I did, yeah, with Stephen Slate years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so I did it for 1 year, but I kind of like to own the plugins, basically. And when clients send me a mix, they send me the tracks, just like the audio directly. Right. Unless they're on Cubase, yeah, now they're gonna send me a session, but no, I start from scratch. So
somebody asks, will a DAW become like an AI extension? Michael, you alluded to this. Somebody says, load it into AI, generate me more ideas, add a bass part, increase the drum tick. How people talk. Do you think we'll be able to talk to, I would like it to sound more sparkly on the cymbal, more snare bottom on the left side? Do you think we're going to get to that point where we have these interactive AI tools about DAWs?
That'd be the great hope, I suppose.
I mean, look how far the video stuff's come. You could be like, show me Will Smith eating spaghetti 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And now, yeah.
Although when it comes to there's that great line, right? That talking about, what is it? Talking about music is like dancing about architecture. I've screwed that up somehow.
Yeah, it's all
but
right.
What are you going to train the AI on? I mean, that's where my mind goes, right? There's no corpus of knowledge that you could train an AI on about all of the curious and poor ways that our clients talk to us and how we talk to each other about sound. So I think we're safe for a while. I think, yeah, I mean, the great Buck Rogers-y sort of Jetsons hope would be that, yes, I could speak to the computer precisely the same way I would speak to a human collaborator. The computer would figure out what I'm talking about and go out and take care of it. Or like a really good assistant, maybe have already done a bunch of things knowing that I'm going to ask for them later. But we're a long ways off from that.
Yeah, I think it's going to come at some point.
It's going to come at some point.
For sure.
Yeah, it's going to come at some point. But what I would like to see, though, as far as an AI tool goes for DAWs, is maybe a way at some point to be able to collaborate from one DAW to another. You know, someone sends me a session in Pro Tools, I can open it in Cubase like easily, you know,
Yep.
even like with all the plugins and everything.
All the automation, all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole shebang, you know. So that would be like a great AI tool to use.
I understand. Okay, Ross, you got your mic open. Go. What do you
I was just going to say there's a thing that they added in the newest version of Pro Tools. I know I keep talking about Pro Tools, but there's a thing that they've added in the SoundFlow. I don't know if you guys have heard of or used SoundFlow before. It's basically a back end protocol of like shortcuts and macros, and like basically you can tell it to do things. But now there's actually an AI function to that. So I don't love this, but you can go, you know, make me a new track with the IO routing to this bus or whatever, and it does it. You know, and it's you obviously there's paywalls, right? So you have to pay subscriptionally to do whatever. But like Andrew Sheps is a big proponent of this, and he's got his whole thing called Bounce Factory, where he's set up in SoundFlow a bunch of shortcuts where you can be like, cool, I finished my mix. I need to print the mix minus this, and this broadcast stems for this and this and this. And you tell it to do it, and then you go out and, you know, do all your shopping, you come back and it's done, right? And that's kind of what it is. We're talking to it in a way, right? And so it is going that way.
Anybody who sells something is automatically an evangelist for the thing that they're selling.
That's right.
That's it. So I know Jason's got to take off, and we'll wrap this up here in 5 minutes here, folks. Okay, so final question. We'll start with Jason because his camera's starting to glitch. You know, his 9th Mac is falling apart there. I don't know what's going on there. I'm joking. Okay, so what is the one thing that is missing in a DAW that you want? Like you've always dreamed, like, you know, we've hinted about that. Jason, what is missing? If there was like the developer from Ableton and you had him for 4 days to code whatever you want, what would you get them to do?
You broke my brain with that question.
Yeah, sorry, it's a good one.
Yeah. No, I would probably give them a little list of like 65 things that are teeny weeny I'd love them to change, but not one big one. I've never been so happy with software, right? You know, it's weird. Like it's already like it's when a program's been built off of, let's solve all those stupid freaking things we hate from all the other programs we've ever used in our life. That's a good starting point. So it's kind of hard. Like I could have never seen the big things that have coming either. Like, you know, but I think, you know, integration with some sort of AI buddy system playing along. I mean, that's kind of cool. Composition tools, but no, I think the more it's weird because you want to shove all these tools into it, but also it's at a nice little equilibrium where you can still balance the human input and reaction. Beautiful. You know, like that. Yeah.
Beautiful. Chris, you know, like same question to you. Like, if you had Cubase programmers on speed dial and they would bend to your wishes, what has always been your biggest peeve or thing that you would love to change about your DAW world?
Honestly, it's very hard to answer because I'm very satisfied with where Cubase is at the moment. Every new version, they just add some cool features that sometimes I think I'm not going to use and I just end up using. Right. Like I'm trying to think. I don't know. Honestly,
that's good. It's good. You know, and you're echoing what Jason's saying. It's like, you know, like the evolution has come so far that yeah,
The DAWs, they're more and more complete. It's hard to add stuff, to make it better. Because even like when we look at the last versions of Pro Tools or Cubase, it could be the same with Ableton. There's not like a world of a difference.
The one common thing between you and Ross, and I'll ask Ross this one, is you mentioned the collaboration thing. The fact that there's walls between manufacturers is
Mhm.
something I think everyone can agree should disappear. Ross, same question to you, as we wrap up here. What would you change? What is missing? What would you want to see happen?
Well, as these guys said, I really am quite happy with the way Pro Tools works, and I think I could see where it's going to this, like getting ARA integration, getting the SoundFlow integration. Those are all awesome. The one thing that I think everybody would love in general would be being able to say, okay, I want to paste this here. Now do that throughout the session or throughout the thing. Like, for example, if you're pasting a drum sample over a snare, you do the first one, it would be fantastic for it to go, oh, okay, I see what you're trying to do here. And then finish that thought, right? Or like, I'm editing this dialogue and I'm cutting it this way, and this is the dialogue. Now finish that task. And I think that is coming.
Predictive editing.
Perfect.
Before I jump to Michael, I'll say my wish is, an EQ is an EQ, a compressor is a compressor. They all have almost identical parameters. Why can't I just copy the parameters of a compressor to a different compressor and copy the parameters from this compressor to this compressor? Ultimately they're just GUIs that look different, but behind the engine, like if they truly sound different, I want to be able to take my EQ settings, copy my EQ settings, and paste my EQ settings. So parameter interchangeability between the two would be my wish. And then, folks, okay, Michael, last words. What do you dream of if you could strangle a software developer like they need to be to do exactly what you wanted? What dream feature is always been on your mind?
None of the above. If in the early 90s, a tape machine and a console climbed into a computer and the baby was called a DAW, well, notwithstanding the fact that Ross's console behind him is a glorious analog one, rather than see what happens to DAWs in the future, I'm much more interested in what happens when some really seriously important things that DAWs do climb back into the console. Large format digital consoles are just a mouse, providing a user interface over a computer that's managing audio in large ways, no different than a DAW, just with a completely different use case and a different sort of set of expectations. Like, in other words, don't crash, things like that. But the fact that I can sit behind a 6-figure console that doesn't know how to record itself is a little bit irritating in the year 2026. So I'm interested in what happens when some of those DAW things, like recording, like plug-in processing, climb back into the console and start, being a little bit more egalitarian with those tools that we've come to expect and depend on when we are allowed to work with an all stop button in a studio or in a post environment, and recognize the fact that a lot of our content happens in a world where failure is not an option because you're live, and yet we still need to get certain things done. And so I'd like to be able to have the same flexibility and choice that I have when I'm in a post-production setting or a non-live setting, when I'm in a live setting, but without overly complicating my life.
I think he froze there at the end as he was making his beautiful point. I think everybody caught that. Michael, what was your last oh man, you missed it. What was your last sentence there? I apologize.
That's what I'm looking for. I want to be able to do live what I can do in post, but without overly complicating my life.
So I hear, folks, that there's friction between DAWs. There's complications in workflows, but everything's getting better. Like, capabilities are there. All right, folks, that was fantastic. Kudos to all of you. Chris, thank you for coming out. Michael, thank you for participating in this. Ross, Jason, kudos to Harris Institute for promoting all of the things. Not that they brought you here or anything like that. You're here on your own. None of these opinions represent the Harris Institute and the Harris Institute of Technology. Folks, good evening. Thank you very much. And Jason, we'll have you back on an OSC MIDI night, talking about OSC. So like that's the other side of this, is like the hardcore nerd sequencer side of things.
Yeah, because I use OSC with Ableton Live and Unreal Engine to create vibrant interactive mod. Yeah. Anyway,
See now that's a whole other night. Folks, thank you very much for this, and thank you, Lee. Thank you, Angelie, for making this happen. For anybody who is interested, the Toronto AES is. You guys can drop off if you absolutely want to, but I'm just going to do the closing remarks here. The Toronto AES is brought to you by our sponsors. Our sponsors have been the Toronto Metropolitan University, University of Toronto Faculty of Music. I apologize if somebody is down there in the basement right now thinking that this event is happening. I apologize to you in advance. Please send me an email. I'll send you a book or a coffee cup or something. Sheridan, the CERT, the Screen Research Institute. Our sponsors are Adamson AV, Shop.ca, BRTB, Lawo, Gear Audio, Sonotechnique, QX5, and Solotech. I think I got to update those sponsors, but we're going to talk about them anyway because we appreciate their continual support of the Audio Engineering Society. If you have comments, questions, or you want to join the executive, we are looking for our next group of executives, a continual group of executives. Our next meeting is in February, and it is the 2026 Members Showcase. So there will be members who are presenting their ideas, and if you want to participate, please reach out to us. Reply back to the email that was sent out earlier today, and we'll get back to you. So thanks, everyone. Good night.